Okay, ladies and gentlemen, because of the noise over there, I'm going to have to raise my voice so that I can be heard. But I want to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, about the case of a woman who killed her child and was imprisoned and was recently released. A woman who was jailed, and I'm reading from the Guardian newspaper, a woman who was jailed for terminating her pregnancy after the legal time limit during the lockdown will be released from prison and reunited with her children after winning a court appeal effort to reduce her sentence. A Court of Appeal judge said that Carla Foster, 45, needed compassion, not punishment, saying her 28-month sentence would be reduced to 14 months and suspended. Sentencing her last month, Mr. Justice Pepperell said Foster would serve half her term in prison and the rest on licence after her release, after she admitted illegally procuring her own abortion when she was between 32 and 34 weeks pregnant. At the Court of Appeal in London on Tuesday, 3 judges reduced her prison sentence. Dame Victoria Sharp, sitting with Lord Justice Holroyd and Mrs. Justice Lambert, said, "This is a very sad case. It is a case that calls for compassion, not for punishment." Now, ladies and gentlemen, what I have just read to you, ladies and gentlemen, is a case in which the murder of a child in this country has just been made acceptable in our courts. The child that was murdered was, as the story points out, was a viable life 32 and 34 weeks into the pregnancy. And our courts and our liberal celebrities all try to portray this child murderer that practiced infanticide and killed her child at 34 weeks as a victim needing compassion. Ladies and gentlemen, a child at 34 and 32 weeks pregnant is a viable life. It is a viable life to have a child at that age. And the woman procured by lying abortion medicine that resulted in the death of her child. Why is this important, ladies and gentlemen? It is important because this is a watershed mark in our culture where we have come to accept the murder of children, where we have come to accept that killing your child is not worthy of punishment. If that child had been removed from the womb and the mother had suffocated the child, you would all condemn her as a murderer, and rightly so. But yet, when this child was murdered inside her mother's womb, despite the fact that the child was a viable life, our culture has said that she is a victim deserving of compassion. This is a sad day A sad day for Christianity. Brother, can you ask them to just take it a step that way? Ask the Christians. Take it a step that way. Take it a step that way. Ladies and gentlemen, we have lost something important in our society. The sanctity of life has been lost. We have created a distinction between life in the womb and life outside of the womb. And we have said that life in the womb is less important than life outside of the womb. When you've got a minute, I'd love a drink of water. Ladies and gentlemen, we have lost the fact that life should be sacred. And notice the hypocrisy of the liberal elites. The liberal elites on Question Time try to talk as if this was not a life. We've had children born at 24 weeks outside of the womb and kept alive. And yet they killed a child at 34 weeks. We all feel repugnation at the crimes of Myra Hindley for killing children. But what we have seen today, ladies and gentlemen, is the justification of infanticide. What we have seen in this case is the justification of child murder. This should alarm us. Truly, the liberal elites are under the influence of demonic forces. Marduk was an evil spirit that demanded child sacrifice. And we see in the Western liberal world that for the religion of self and self-gratification, even the murder of children is acceptable to the liberal elites. This kind of degeneracy, this kind of barbaric savagery in which we commit and justify infanticide is killing the West. It is a corrosive influence on our spirits and upon our souls. The more we have moved away from our Christian heritage, the more we have moved towards savagery and barbarism in the West. We must recover our own Christian identity and reject the liberal religion of self. And we must understand that the religion of the Western world is a religion of man worship. It is a religion of self-worship, where the sacrifice that is demanded is the lives of countless millions of children in the Western world, in abortion mills, where children are slaughtered in their thousands every single week of the year. The West is slitting its own throat. The West is cutting its own wrist. Because when we abandoned Christianity, we lost the sanctity of life that is upheld in the commandments, which states, "Thou shalt not murder." Murder is the killing of the innocent. And there is no one more innocent in the situation than I have just described than that poor child murdered by her mother and supported by the liberal elites who want you to believe that she did not commit a crime. And I want to point out to you again that if she had done this to her child outside of the womb, you would all be indignant. So why Are you not indignant when she does it to her child inside of the womb? Ladies and gentlemen, liberalism is killing the West. Christianity is the answer to the cancer of liberalism. We need to return to a muscular Christian faith and to re-establish, without apology, Christian values and Christian attitudes to recover the Western civilization from the cliff that it is chucking itself off. Because if the West concludes that the lives of its own children are not important, then it concludes that none of our lives are important, and they can all be sacrificed to the religion of self. So learn what is the religion of self. Learn how it is different to Christianity, and learn to uphold Christian values without apology. And notice the importance of controlling the judiciary. Liberals control the judiciary in the UK. So infanticide has just been made less of a crime in the womb than outside of the womb. But in America, Christians control the judiciary, and abortion has just been made much harder. This tells us as Christians how important it is for us to capture the heights of judiciary and law in shepherding the people in the right direction that they must go. If we believe the Ten Commandments, then we must uphold that what this woman did was infanticide, and that her punishment should not be 14 months on a suspended sentence, but life imprisonment like Myra Hindley. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
I asked you this last time, but you got kind of interrupted, so I'll ask it again. What would you say to Muslims who think theirs is the one that's being oppressed?
Okay, can I come to that question when I've answered questions on the topic?
Sure.
I will come back to it when the questions on the topic run out. Go on.
So not that it's right if you do the abortion before, but why didn't she get it done before?
Right, that's a great question. Why didn't she have the abortion before? She obviously changed her mind late on in the pregnancy. She passed the legal limit of when the abortion was allowed, which means that she committed a crime. And she did it, according to all her liberal defenders, because she had mental health problems. I'm willing to accept that that is true. But would that justify her murdering her children that are alive? No. So how can it be used to justify her murder of her child inside the womb? Any other questions on the topic? So should, if a woman is raped, have the right to an abortion? No, because the child has committed no crime. The child is the innocent one. And the commandment is, thou shalt not murder. The difference between murder and execution is that when you execute someone, they're guilty of committing a crime. When you murder someone, they are innocent of committing a crime, and the child of a rape victim is someone who is innocent. And so even the child of a rape victim should be protected under the law. Any other questions?
Too late for the UK. You just want to move out and shake the dust of all Sunday.
Any questions on the topic? I'll come back to that.
To do with example like that, there is.
So is this an example of showing that it is too late for the UK? This is the kind of defeatist narrative that disempowers those on the political right. There's too many people that say all hope is lost, Britain is lost, let's despair. As a Christian, I must follow the code of chivalry, and the code of chivalry instructs me as a Christian knight that I must act in the belief that my actions can affect change, that I can make a difference. Christians must operate from a place of hope, and hope does not surrender to despair. So unlike those despairing types on the political right and those cynics, we Christians must always act with the belief that our actions can make society better, and we must fight as valiant soldiers under the banner of Christ against sin, the world, and the devil. Christian soldiers are always on active duty, always fighting the good fight, and that means that we cannot surrender to the opposition. We cannot give in to the idea that the battle is over. And why? Because Christ has won the victory. Everything that we are doing is just mopping up the enemy. Any other questions? Now back to your question. Go on, ask your question again.
What would you say to Muslims who think that theirs is the party that's being oppressed?
Okay, so the question is, what would I say to Muslims who are saying that there is the party being oppressed? I would point out to them that across the entire Islamic world, without any exception, Christians are a persecuted minority. Pick any Muslim society you want, and I will show you examples where Christians are being persecuted as a minority. That persecution varies in its intensity. In northern Nigeria, it's an act of genocide. In Syria and Iraq, it is an act of genocide. In Indonesia, it's acts of discrimination. Islam teaches that Christians are supposed to be treated as second-class citizens, and it reduces them to the status of second-class citizens. So I would say to the Muslims that teach that they are the party that is oppressed, if they have a problem with that idea, why do they support a religion that advocates the oppression, persecution, and discrimination of others? That's what I would say to them. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Going back to the rape case,
Yeah.
if it's a rape, I can understand the child's done no wrong, but the mum will be constantly reminded of the incident over and over again on a daily basis, monthly basis. She might even see the rapist's face in the child's face. You know, I'm talking physical characteristics. So that's the only point I would discuss with you. Everything else you've done is fantastic.
Thank you. So, for the Christian, are you a Christian, brother? Hindu, okay, fair enough. For the Christian, there can be no compromise on what the commandments teach. Again, the commandments teach, thou shalt not murder. The difference between a murder and an execution is that an execution is supposed to be of a guilty party, but murder is of an innocent party. The woman who is a victim of a rape is the victim of a crime, and she should be fully supported by the state, and the rapist should be fully punished. There's no doubt about that. However, the child committed no crime in abortion. And so, in the worst case scenario, where the mother doesn't want the child should be given up for adoption, and the mother should be given counselling and support, and the rapist should be punished for the rape. However, what the Western liberal world is doing is compounding one crime with another crime. The woman is raped, and then the child is murdered for the crimes of the father. How is that fair and just? It isn't fair and just. And ladies and gentlemen, you have Muslims say that Islam will save us from the degeneracy of the West. But the reality is, Islam teaches abortion. So Islam teaches the murder of innocent lives. And how can that be any less degenerate than the West? As you can see, it's chucking it down with rain. So I suspect, is your camera going to be all right? You need an umbrella, bro. As you see, ladies and gentlemen, we might have to stop for the rain. Thank you very much. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
If the state fails to the woman that was raped, because eventually she will not have an option to abort.
I'm sorry, say the question again.
If the state will not be able to help the woman who was committed the crime of rape,
Yeah.
how can if the state fails, how can the church improve?
This is a great question. In fact, I just want to applaud this lady for asking singularly the best question I've been asked today. If the state fails, how can the church improve? And I want to say to you, my brothers and sisters, especially those brothers and sisters who are living in failed states like South Africa, where the state is failing, you have an opportunity to step in and organize yourself to do what the state is not doing, and to organize yourself to fill in the gaps where the state has failed. Ladies and gentlemen, when the state fails as it does, the church should become a state within a state. We should become a people within the people, and we must organize ourselves to give justice to those who have not found justice from the state. We must organize ourselves to give charity where the state has failed to give charity. And we must do so with a harsh critique of the state and an appeal to the people, which is very clear, that you should come to Mother Church and you should side with Mother Church even against the state that has failed you. And that is true for Christians in India, Christians in South Africa, Christians in Sudan, Christians in Nigeria, and increasingly Christians in Italy and Spain and Greece, where the state has failed to care for the people.
In the situation you've just described, does that sort of entail a church, an individual church, acting as a sort of mini local government?
Okay, so historically, ladies and gentlemen, the history of the church has always been that the church has always had its own government of its own people. These were done by councils of the church, and we need to recover strong councils of the church that govern the people of God, because they want to be governed by faithful bishops. And if those faithful bishops call us to reject the laws of the state, or ignore the laws of the state, or to do what the state does not want us to do, that we follow the government of the church over the government of the state. So yes, it does. But it isn't that each congregation is a government to itself. It is that the Christians in a city govern themselves. Let me just move this closer. Maybe stick this umbrella between the two. Okay.
That shouldn't be revolutionary, but in a way it is, and I can get behind that.
Yeah, any other questions?
Wonderful talk.
Thank you. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Let's face it, you've got to be hardcore to want to stay out in this rain.